So after calculating the reservation emissions, what I want to do is make a summary table that I can include in my emissions inventory report. So in a blank spreadsheet, you're going to make a little table that you want exactly how you want it to look in your emissions inventory, and that's what's showing on my screen now. So I've got my pollutants up here, and I've got my road types I'm going to include down here. The one thing you'll notice is I've got the 4 road types we calculated for, and then I've got a sum that sums the rural local and on the Coconino side and the rural local on the Yavapai side, because I want to report that as a sum. I don't want to report it separately in my emissions inventory. So I'm going to write a formula in those cells to calculate that sums these two. And then I'm going to just, in my report, in my EI, I'm just going to remove those 2 rows from that table because I don't need them anymore. So we're going to show you how to do that. So we're going to copy the data from our TICE spreadsheets into this little table. So we're going to look at the Coconino County report that we have been working on. And we want to take these reservation emissions here and get them into that little table. So we're going to do this one at a time for the pollutants. We're going to click copy. And then we're going to go into that spreadsheet. And this is the interstate and local for Coconino County. So we're going to do paste special. And we're going to do values. And let's go to the next pollutant, which is ammonia. Copy. And paste special values. And now I'm going to pretend like I'm one of those cooking shows where you see the nice biscuits go into the oven and then they come out all done, and they come out all done in like a second, even though half an hour has gone by. So I'm going to show you, here is after I have pasted all this data in. So I pasted the data for the entire Coconino County, and I pasted the data for the Yavapai County report into my little table. So that was just a fast forward. We're going to do a formula that calculates the sum of these two, the Coconino rural and the Yavapai rural local roads. That we're going to do like we did before. We're going to start with an equal sign. That tells Excel that we're writing a formula. And then we're going to select this cell, B4, and we're going to enter the plus sign because we're calculating a sum. So plus rural local on Yavapai side. And it says B4 plus B6. And we click enter, and it calculates that for us. Now I'm going to copy that over into my other cells by clicking and dragging. You click on this little corner here and you drag, and that copies the formula over. Okay, so this is column H, so H4 plus H6. Yep, that's correct. Coconino rural local plus Yavapai rural local. So that's right. Now what I want to do is I want to calculate a reservation total. So I want to calculate the total amount of emissions from roads on my reservation. So that is going to be another formula I'm going to write. And we're going to say equals. So I want to include the rural interstate and then type a plus. And I don't want to include the rural local because I'm going to include this sum instead. And if I included both the rural local and the sum, I'd be double counting my emissions. So I just want to include that sum. So I click rural interstate, rural other principal arterial, and I click a plus, and then I click the sum. So that calculates the total without double counting for that sum here. So the total CO emissions on my reservation is 203.93 about tons of carbon monoxide. And I'm going to click and drag to drag that formula over to my other cells. And again, I want to double check that this is what I was expecting. So, yep, H3 plus H5 plus H7, that's what I wanted. So I click enter, and that's correct. What I want to do now is change the number format because this is too many decimal places and it makes it really confusing to look at. So I'm just going to change the number of decimal places to 2. So I'm going to highlight all these cells, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to click on Format Cells, and I'm going to select Number, and that allows me to specify how many decimal places I want in my data. So I want 2 decimal places, so I'll click OK. And now the table looks a lot easier to read because there's not all those numbers. That's confusing to the eyes. So what I want to do now is copy this entire table into my emissions inventory, which is a Word document. I don't have an emissions inventory right now. I'm just going to copy it into a blank Word document just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to open up Word, and I'm going to copy that from Excel into Word. So I'm just going to highlight this entire thing, the entire table. I'm going to right click and select copy, and then I'm going to my Word document, and I'm going to right click, paste. Now that's the table I wanted to see. What we want to do here is in our emissions inventory, we don't need to show these Coconino rural local and Yavapai rural local because we've got the sum, so we don't need to show these. So we're going to delete these. Let's see if I can delete row. I can right click on it to delete the row. And I'm going to delete this one, right click. So we're deleting these because we already have the sum. Let me just delete this one. We have the sum rural local, so we have previously summed that in the Excel. So we don't need those in our table because we've already included them in the sum here. This is how I want my table to look in my emissions inventory. And to check this, what I would recommend doing is get a calculator out from your desk drawer and type in these numbers and make sure that they equal the reservation total. And that's a good way to check formulas in Excel that you did them correctly, is just to get out a calculator and type in the numbers and see if they equal what you think they're supposed to equal and what's in the table. Each of these spreadsheets that I've used are available for you to look at in the course download site. And I wanted also to let you know that if you don't have to use this method to estimate your on-road emissions. You have other options. It's just one example of how I would do it if I was doing an emissions inventory. For example, if you wanted to learn moves, you could do that and you could get more accurate emissions that way because they'd be reservation specific. Or if there's a different method you want to use to scale down the emissions, you could do that. For example, maybe you don't have the VMT values for each county of the reservation. Maybe you have a total VMT value. And in that case, it might be easier for you to just generate one report by selecting both Yavapai County and Coconino County in that filter of the report, and then using the total to allocate your emissions. And just remember that we're here to help you with this. I know it's a complicated process, but we'd be very happy to help you with this or review your work at any stage of the process. And that concludes the demonstration on calculating on-road emissions.